Good evening. Welcome to Crawley Borough Council's Planning Committee meeting. I'm Councillor Pritchard, Chair of the committee. There are no scheduled fire drills tonight, so in the event of a fire alarm, please leave the building via the spiral staircase and the main reception door. Once outside, turn left and go to the fire assembly point on Exchange Road. If you're unable to use the stairs, you will be guided by a member of staff to use the evacuation lift. This meeting is being live streamed via the Council's YouTube channel. Please note there is no comment function available. The Council is the data controller and will retain the data collected during this webcast. This will be done in accordance with the Council's published data retention policy. Anyone seated in the public gallery should be aware that by entering the room you are consenting to your image being captured by the automated camera system. Recordings will be used for webcasting or training purposes. The meeting agenda is available on the Council website. Around these tables sit the committee members who will be taking decisions on the items before them. Officers of the Council are also in attendance and I invite them to introduce themselves now, beginning with the gentleman to my left.
Good evening, I'm Chris Pedlow, Data and Democracy Manager.
Good evening, Siraj Chowdhury, Head of Governance.
Good evening, Hamish Walk, Acting Group Manager for Development Management.
Good evening, Val Cheeseman, Principal Planning Officer.
Good evening, Clem Smith, Head of Economy and Planning.
Are there any apologies for absence?
No, Chair.
We will now take items 2 and 3 together. I will call upon committee members to declare any interests or lobbying in relation to any of the items. Please also declare if you visited any of the sites. Councillor Adonai.
No.
Councillor Bidwell.
Good evening. No interest to declare. I didn't attend any site visits and I haven't been lobbied.
Councillor Burgess.
Good evening. I hope you can hear me. I've got very little voice tonight. I didn't get to the site visits, unfortunately, due to ill health, and I have not been lobbied, and I have no declaration of interest unless West Sussex suddenly pops up. Thank you.
Councillor Hart.
Good evening. I have a personal non-prejudicial interest in the item regarding the ambulance station. As I'm the secretary of the club that's next door. I haven't done an official site visit, but I do keep an eye on the place as I'm passing frequently, and I haven't been lobbied.
Councillor Jaggard.
Good evening. I've got no interest to declare. I've not been lobbied. I have visited both Longley House and the ambulance station on previous occasions when it came up before the committee a couple of years ago, whenever it was. Thank you.
Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Chair. I've got no interest to declare. I've not been lobbied and I've not visited any sites. Thank you.
Councillor Mullins.
I've no interest to declare. I haven't been lobbied. I know the ambulance station site well. I don't know Longley House so well.
Councillor McGarley.
Good evening. I have not been lobbied. I have no interest to declare, and I have visited both sites. Sorry.
Councillor Nawaz.
Thank you, Chair. I've got no interest to declare, and I've not been lobbied on any of things, and not been visited these sites recently, but I've visited those sites, especially Longley House and the ambulance station in the past. Thank you.
Councillor Patel.
Good evening, Chair. I have no interest to declare. I have not been lobbied and I have not visited the sites. Thank you.
Okay, and I have not been lobbied nor visited any of the sites, but I will declare a personal non-prejudicial interest as being a member of the Ewhurst Wood Social Club, which is next door to the ambulance station site. Now we've come to the minutes of the last meeting held on the 1st of October 2024. Does the committee agree the minutes are an accurate record of the meeting? Agreed. Agreed, thank you. We now move on to agenda item 5. CR 20200024 FUL Longley House, East Park, Southgate. Can the Planning Officer introduce the report?
Thank you, Chair. This application for 121 flats is being brought back to you tonight to consider the requirements of the new local plan policies. I'll firstly just run through a background to the application. The application was originally considered by committee on 3rd of November 2020 when it was resolved to grant permission subject to the completion of a Section 106 legal agreement and conditions. Negotiations at that time on the Section 106 proceeded and it was close to completion, but then Crawley Borough Council received the Natural England position statement in September 2021 about water neutrality. The application was then considered by the Planning Committee for a second time on 30th of August 2022 in regard to water neutrality. The scheme proposed water efficient fixtures and fittings and grey water recycling, and this water use would be offset by the Crawley Homes retrofitting scheme. It was resolved to grant plan permission in accordance with the earlier resolution with an additional clause in the Section 106 legal agreement to secure the water neutrality measures, and there were revised updated conditions. Discussions on Section 106 continued, but as the current report sets out, the Section 106 had not been completed as the original applicant, A2 Dominion, took the decision not to proceed with the scheme. Crawley Homes have purchased the site and are now the applicant, and they are going to implement the development. The MPPF was updated in December 2023 and the Crawley Borough Local Plan was adopted on 16th of October 2024. Thus, the application is being brought back to the committee to consider the current policy situation, as this is the only changed outstanding issue for consideration. Firstly, I'm going to show you the plans just to illustrate the scheme and some photographs, and then I will comment on the conclusions of the policy assessment. So on the screen is the location plan. The site here at the end of East Park with access from Southgate Avenue, Aurora Hotel to the east, Zurich House to the west, other residential development in Clitheroe Gardens and Richmond Court to the south. Along the northern boundary is the railway line and then Overline House and the site of Mocha on the other side. This is the existing site plan, which shows the position of the existing office buildings and the car parking arrangements on site, and then the relationship with the adjoining buildings, and it also shows the existing vegetation on the site and around the boundaries. And then this is the proposed site plan, which is for a U-shaped building with a sort of central courtyard. Access would be via Southgate Avenue, with parking around the perimeter of the site, and landscaping towards the middle. And this is the landscape master plan, which shows additional landscaping to be undertaken on the site, particularly trees along the boundaries, and the landscaped courtyard open space area, with them parking along the boundaries. Got some photographs of the site. So this is the view from East Park. These were taken in 2020, but you can see Longley House there and the Aurora Hotel in the distance. And then this is on the site more. So here's the corner of Longley House. There's Overline House on the other side of the railway line in the distance, and the corner of Zurich House there. This was taken in 2020, so there's another floor on Zurich House. You can just see the steel framework there at the time. And then from within the site itself, with the car parking, Aurora Hotel in the background. Then this is from Clitheroe Gardens, with the first house in that road, and you can see the Longley House at the side there. And then moving round into Richmond Court, a view through to Longley House, and further round into that cul-de-sac. You can see Aurora and Longley House there. The current report sets out and assesses the new policy considerations that apply to this scheme arising from the recently adopted local plan. And so they are discussed in the report, and they include health and well-being, design, affordable housing, BNG, so biodiversity net gain, parking, infrastructure contributions, and public art. Following this evaluation, there are additional requirements that arise that are needed to make this scheme acceptable. So this is an employment and skills plan for the development itself, a financial contribution for employment and skills of £8,451.08, and also a travel monitoring fee, which is now required, of £1,440. These can all be included within the Section 106, as well as the other requirements previously resolved. In addition, the conditions have been updated to now refer to the new local plan policies, and they are set out in the agenda. The application has already been considered by Planning Committee on 2 occasions, with resolutions to permit, subject to the conclusion of the Section 106 legal agreement and with the imposition of conditions. However, since those resolutions, there is a new policy context arising from the adoption of the new local plan in October this year. And so this is the additional aspect that you are asked to be considered tonight. The recommendation is to permit the application as set out in the agenda, which includes the additional elements for the Section 106 legal agreement and the updated conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There are no speakers registered to speak on this item, so we now move to the debate. Committee members wishing to speak should raise their hand. The officer will respond to queries one by one. Councillor Chowerton, can I ask if you have got any interest to declare, whether you've done a site visit or... What's the other thing?
And I've been lobbied. Yeah. Firstly, I apologise for being a few minutes late. As you know, I have a prior standing meeting, so timing is very tight. So, okay, so my apologies. I have no, I haven't been lobbied. I have no special interest in this, and I have visited the site.
And can you give me the lobbying and interest on all the items?
Oh, yeah, no, I've not been lobbied on any of them, and I have no vested interest in any of the items.
Thank you very much. Have you visited any of the sites?
Yes, so so I've visited the Cherry Meadow, I think it is, the TPO, and also I am very familiar with the ambulance station on Ifield Drive, where it is. Yeah. the old ambulance station. Ifield Avenue, thank you. There's so many Ifield things.
Thank you. And your contribution to this debate?
Okay, so looking through the documentation, I've clearly been through a lot of work, many stages, been rumbling on since 2020. So, clearly there's a lot of work been done. I can see there's much change and a commendation as well for the soundproofing, which is quite nice, which was particularly sort of wanted to be merited. So the questions I have, a couple of questions. I didn't see any objections, so I may have missed that part, but I didn't see any formal objections from any local residents. I was wondering if I'd have missed that, or whether there were any objections and what they might be. Because I can see how local residents might feel a little uncomfortable with a fairly large building being put, particularly residents of houses. I know there's some tall buildings there as well already, but from the perspectives, I just wondered. But the things I was looking at as well, and again, I may have missed this, but I didn't see what provision there was for disabled access. I presume it must be in there because it's a legal requirement, but it'd be interesting to hear that explicitly mentioned, if you can highlight that for me. Plus, another factor perhaps wasn't relevant at the time you were looking at it, but the upcoming in the provision of bin storage, I didn't see anywhere mentioned food waste collection. Now, I mention this because this has I was on the I wouldn't say the waste committee, where we discussed this, and flats are a particular issue for waste collection in any case. But we were how can I say, had lots of debates about how this might be done. I was wondering if there's, given that it's a new build, whether there are any thoughts given to that and how it might be incorporated into the design of the building. I know it's a bit of a sort of late googly, so to speak, but it seems important. Thank you.
Thank you. With regard to letters of representation, we did have concerns concerns expressed. That was reported the first time to the Planning Committee. So that's actually on page 27 of the current agenda. So that runs through the objections received and comments received. So there were issues raised on a number of matters, relating to the relationship of it to adjoining properties, and then that's sort of discussed further in the report at that time. So that was considered. Page 27 of the current agenda. Yeah, I believe. Yeah. So Appendix A.
Councillor Charlton, can I also remind you that we're looking at mainly the differences between last time it came to committee and the current situation, primarily?
In terms of disabled access, that would be secured through the design, and in terms of highways comments, they were looking at level access through into the site, drop curbs, etc. With regard to bin storage and food waste collection, well, bin storage was assessed, and we had comments from the refuse section, but obviously at that time, food waste collection wasn't a matter that was relevant, I suppose, at that particular moment in time. Thank you.
Any further comments, Councillor Charlton?
I guess following up on the food waste matter, what do you want to do with that? Because I don't want to leave it hanging. I know there's going to be like a working committee looking at that, but as I say, so where I'm coming from with this one is that things like waste chutes and so on have been discussed, but that doesn't make sense to implement those in any existing buildings. And I'm not suggesting we do that with this building, but just considering that in the current design, is there what can be incorporated, if anything? just to keeping that in mind.
I'm sure Crawley Homes will be working with the waste collection teams regarding the other flats, so hopefully they will take on board any comments made to make things easier. But
could I just come in while I was checking something else, just to let you know what the new local plan says? So I think it is probably very similar wording to the previous local plan. It does require provision of waste and recycling stores within new developments. There's nothing specific on food waste in the local plan. I think it would be fair to say that the refuse team will, I'm sure, be commenting on that in future applications, and we'll try to address it. But I think it would be, it's not something we can do through this scheme. They have both got bin stores, both the schemes we're looking at tonight. But I think in terms of enlarging them and redesigning the building to accommodate that, that's not something we could pursue at this stage, I don't think.
okay, Councillor Adonai.
Thank you very much. I've looked at this briefly, and the point 1.22 that deals with parking spaces. This is a 121, if I'm, it's 121 building, accommodation, and there's a provision for just 58 parking spaces. And though the report actually recognized the difficulty in providing these adequate parking spaces, but it says that the residents will have a range of realistic alternative transport choices for their day-to-day requirements and will not be reliant on the use of private car in such a location. And well, I don't know if car ownership will be one of the criteria to get an accommodation there, because at the moment we will assume that every household will have one car each. And how do we resolve the idea of either prioritizing car ownership in the place? And I'm borrowing from the experience we had in Tailgate about the project that is close to Tailgate, and the residents complain about the issue of the volume of cars that will come to the project near Tailgate. And have we sought out the opinion of the residents around that area, having over 100 cars pass through that cul-de-sac every day? And then I know from the report it says that it will be visually unappealing to create more parking spaces there. But I foresee a parking crisis there, when everybody brings up the reasons why having a car to use there is more important than the other person. So what is the realistic alternative that the committee is looking at in addressing this problem? Thank you.
Thank you. I think for a site like this, in real close proximity to the middle of the town centre, right next door to the railway station, to insist on perhaps one space per unit would be seen to be perhaps unrealistic, and because it is in such close proximity to other public transport options. So you've got the bus station, you've got the train station, so it's got good links to other locations in the town, but also it's close to the facilities that are in the town centre. So in that regard, residents wouldn't be overly reliant on day-to-day needs to a car to get to locations, because they're in the middle of the town centre itself. In terms of occupants and whether they have a car or not, I would say that would be a matter for the owner, and if they wish to implement a criteria, then that would be a matter for them. So that would be a matter for Crawley Homes if that was a particular issue, and then they would obviously be managing the car park as well. So it's looking at all of that together, really. And I would also say that as part of the legal agreement, there is provision for a car club as well, or to be contributions towards a car club. So again, another alternative to the private car. So putting all of that together, then we felt that the car parking that was proposed was at an acceptable level in this highly sustainable location.
Any other? Councillor Jaggard?
Thank you. Thank you. Can I just clarify, is this a completely new application or are we just considering the changes? Because it's already got planning permission as it stands. So we're just looking tonight at the changes. So we can't really refuse it because it's already been passed. Is that the case?
Yeah, the situation is it's already been resolved to grant planning permission. We haven't actually issued the final document because the legal agreement hadn't been completed because of a number of matters. So one was water neutrality, which sort of stopped it, and then more recently it's because of the change in the applicant. So it was just that legal agreement hadn't been signed, and therefore we don't issue the permission until the legal agreement is signed. So there's already 2 resolutions to grant permission, and all we're doing tonight is reconsidering it in the light of the new local plan, because that's the development plan, and it's just to make sure that the decision has covered all aspects.
That's what I thought. And obviously, I've sat on both of those through those, and I know a lot of my colleagues haven't seen the application before because it's been very involved and going on for a very long time. So the other question I have is, at the time that came to committee before, there was some concerns about the access past the Aurora, because the Aurora owns that road, because basically it's the Aurora's driveway, and there was a concern about whether all these vehicles that we've just been told about are actually going to be able to go up there, because it is a privately owned drive, not CBC land, not West Sussex Highways land. And I wondered if that issue had been resolved, because it's all very well saying they're parking spaces, but if nobody can drive across the Aurora property to get to them, that is going to be an issue. And I wondered if that issue had been sorted.
Yeah, from my understanding, part of the concern I think that had been expressed was there was a part of the drive between the 2 pieces of land, so the Aurora and then this site, that wasn't level and needed to be levelled off by this development, but it was owned by Aurora. So that was where the dispute, if you like, between the 2 ownerships arose. But there were discussions between A2 Dominion and Aurora, and that got resolved. So that issue hasn't arisen, and it's really a matter for Crawley Homes just to ensure that those discussions are still the case with this current applicant. So it's really a matter for the applicant to resolve.
That's what was said last time. It's a matter for the applicant, but now we're the applicant. Are we going to be held over a barrel about getting access across the Aurora land? I don't. It is a little bit concerning.
I think firstly to say that we are the local planning authority, so we're not the applicant. That's Crawley Homes. And it really is a matter between the applicant and the adjoining landowner, Aurora, to sort matters of access out. So it's a private property issue, it's not a planning matter.
Okay, do any other colleagues? Councillor Burgess.
Thank you. Coming on from that, I just looking at the letters of objection, and the hotel as mentioned not being involved in a pre-application consultation process, but then seems to say that the red line for the application site is incorrect and needs to include the access road to Southgate Avenue. So have I misunderstood it? Is this something, can you just clarify that a little bit, please? That's on page
I'll just go back to another plan. That I think that comment was received early on in the application.
Oh, right.
I'll just zoom in.
That's what. So it's the other one.
I think when it initially came in, it didn't include the red line along here, so that was picked up and then that was addressed.
Oh, right.
So the red line now does include proper access. So the bit of land I was talking about where there was a difference was, I just zoom in here, it was just across here where there were
yes.
issues of levels that highways wanted to be resolved, so it was a clear level access all the way through. But part of that was on Aurora land, but that's the ownership issue that the two parties need to resolve. But in terms of gaining access to the highway, that's now been addressed by the red line.
Right, okay, thank you.
Any other colleagues? Okay. All committee members have had the opportunity to speak, so we will move on to the vote. The recommendation is to permit. As Chair, I will move the recommendation. Can I ask the Vice Chair to second, please?
Seconded.
Can I ask for a show of hands for all those for the recommendation? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Application CR20200024 FUL has been permitted, subject to a subsection 106 agreement and the conditions set out in the report. We now move on to agenda item 6, CR20200274 FUL, Ambulance Station, Ifield Avenue, West Green. Can I ask the Planning Officer to introduce the report?
Thank you, Chair. This report, as members will see, is very similar to the Longley House report that you've just considered. It is simply before you to update committee and then the committee resolution in terms of the new local plan and the updated version of the MPPF that was published in December last year, actually just after you last considered this application. So the ambulance station lies at the on Ifield Avenue, quite close to the Crawley Avenue junction. Sorry, the Crawley Avenue roundabout, I should say. The roundabout's just off to the left here. So the ambulance station site is here. It's got woodland to the north, east and west, really, and Ifield Avenue running to the south. The site, as you all know, contains a former ambulance station site, but it has been vacant for several years now. And this application has been to committee twice, as with Longley House. Firstly, for the sort of full assessment of the application, and then subsequently, once we'd received the Natural England position statement, to update the resolution with regard to that. Just show you the site plan that is part of the application. So nothing physically has changed with the application since you last saw it. It's proposing a kind of courtyard development wrapping round on three sides, but open to the east. There'll be a central kind of amenity space for residents of the flats. There's 39 flats in total, and a parking area to the front accessed off Ifield Avenue in the same position as the current access to the site. So as I said, the report is really just to seek an updated resolution taking account of the new national and local policies. The consideration section of the report from page 88 onwards sets out the implications, particularly of the local plan changes, and really the issues are the same as the ones that Val mentioned earlier. In terms of the recommendation itself, there are a few changes. So firstly, the noise conditions. The previous resolution delegated officers authority to agree the noise conditions, so it's conditions 17 and 18 in your report. There has been further work done on that, both by the applicant and by Environmental Health, and 17 actually I think is largely unchanged, but 18 has been updated to reflect those discussions and does require further noise reporting and information about protection for residents of the scheme from noise disturbance to be submitted and agreed. The other thing that has changed, or that further information has been provided on, there was a concern raised previously about potential access to the bike and bin stores within the development because there's a kind of perforated wall panels on parts of the ground floor. So what we now have from the applicant is an assessment of whether it would be physically possible for someone to reach their arm through what are pretty small holes in the bricks, and then I'll just zoom in a bit, whether someone could actually get an arm through the small holes in the bricks here and then reach across to open the doors. And given the distances involved and the small size of the hole, they've concluded, and I would agree with them, that it just would not be physically possible for anyone to reach their arm through and then bend it at right angles and reach across to the handles of the doors to actually get in. So I think they've addressed that, and that again was something that was delegated to officers, but I think we are now satisfied that issue has been addressed. So in terms of the other changes, as with Longley House, there's a requirement for an employment and skills plan prior to commencement, so that would be largely dealing with the site itself. A financial contribution of £11,671.81 towards employment and skills, and a financial contribution of £2,663 towards sustainable transport improvements. So they're all reflected in the new, the annex to the new local plan that deals with contributions. The other thing that is mentioned in the report is worth noting is that previously the scheme was going to deliver 30% affordable, and that level had been agreed for viability reasons. The applicant is now able to increase that figure to a fully policy compliant level of 40% affordable housing within the site. So that's a change to the earlier resolution and can be secured through the Section 106 agreement. So the recommendation is set out on from page 90 of the report onwards, along with all the conditions. Thank you.
Okay, there were no speakers registered in regard to this, so we now move to the debate. Committee members wishing to speak should raise their hand. Officers will respond to queries one by one. Councillor Nawaz.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to clarify one of the last point Hamish was mentioning. They've previously been given the resolution on 30% of the affordable housing because of the viability. What has changed since then? Is the construction cost gone down, or more units coming in because they're willing to, now to do that 40% full policy compliant, which is great to hear that. It's a very positive thing. But how did they manage that?
I don't think anything has changed in terms of costs or anything else. I think the reason the applicant is now willing to do it is that in all likelihood Crawley Homes will be buying this scheme as well, and that there is obviously there's the committee resolution tonight to be addressed. There's still some land deal arrangements to be sorted out, but I think that both parties seem reasonably confident that it will progress and it will probably end up being a 100% affordable housing scheme. But we wouldn't normally secure that through planning. That's something that happens if Crawley Homes buy a site and decide that's what they want to do. But I think it's given the applicant just a bit more reassurance to think that they can step up to the 40% because they think that's the direction the scheme's going in.
You turn your mic off. Ah. Clem, could you point your mic over? I don't know if it's battery died or... Hello, mine's working.
Mine's working.
Oh, there you go. Okay, sorry, I'm back. So yes, I don't think in terms of build costs and that kind of thing, nothing's changed. I think the applicant has just got a little bit more reassurance about where the scheme is likely to be heading.
Thank you. No, it's really good news, positive, but it's obviously if it comes to 100% affordable, that's really good for Crawley and our residents who are waiting for the houses for a long, long time. And just thinking, if Crawley Homes not able to even, committing 100% to buy this, still 40% is a positive. But I just wanted to know if there is anything changed materially, because that's 10% quite a big number. When developers talk about another planning application, they fight for it because obviously they're losing their margins there. No, it's good to hear. Thank you.
Any other comments from colleagues?
We just try them
out. Okay. Oh, Councillor Burgess.
Probably isn't for this committee, and it's probably an observation rather than a question. or a concern. It looks a very interesting little area, and I quite like the look of it. I'm just concerned that parking will spill out into the area next door to it, which is the where the club is and where the horticultural is. There's no that you can park there any time. They don't seem to have any idea of stopping park. I'm just wondering, is that a concern, an issue? Is that something to be resolved by the local people who own the place next door, or we've thought of that, or it's just a comment really, just a concern? So.
Well, I think the first thing to say is that parking has been considered already on this application.
Yes,
it was
yes,
considered in some detail at the time. The parking standards in the new local plan for this site are lower than the previous local plan, so I think there's even less reason now to revisit that than there were before. Unfortunately, I think in situations like that, I mean, the resolution does include a traffic regulation order, and that will partly tidy up some bits immediately around the site on Ifield Avenue to make sure parking doesn't take place along there. I think there's a couple of sections that are not currently controlled. But in terms of kind of privately owned land or land that I don't know who owns that car park, that would need to be managed by the owner of that car park. And yes, so I think if they experience that problem, they're going to have to bring in their own controls, I think, to manage it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Mullins.
Just a bit of information really. The car park next door is a public car park, and therefore anybody can park there at any time. So it's exactly the same as any other development that happens in the town. If there's somewhere fairly near where people can spill over into parking, then they will. And it is something we need to address, I think, as a council in the future, our public car parks and what they're used for and how that affects the people who they were built for, to be quite honest. But that's something for the future and that's not for the planning committee. But can I just say that I'm absolutely delighted that at long last both of these developments are coming forward, and especially the way they're going to be developed, it's affordable housing for the residents of Crawley. And so I'm really pleased that it's just minor little tweaks that we're doing, and I hope we're to see some building starting there very, very soon in both areas.
Okay, any further comments from my colleagues? Okay, all committee members have had the opportunity to speak, so we'll move on to the vote. The recommendation is to permit, subject to a Section 106 agreement and the conditions set out in the report. As Chair, I will move the recommendation. Can I ask the Vice Chair to second, please?
I second the recommendation.
Please can I ask for a show of hands all those for the recommendation? Again, unanimous. Thank you very much. Now move on to agenda item 7, CR 2024-0348 TPO, Harlech Close, Pound Hill. Can I ask the officer to introduce the report?
Thank you, Chair. Just go on to the location plan. Right, this is a Crawley Borough Council application for works to 10 oak trees adjacent to Harlech Close, and the trees are the subject of a tree preservation order. Make that a bit bigger. So the site is to the north of Harlech Close, cul-de-sac here, and to the south of this path that links Blackwater Lane through to Green Lane. I've got some photographs. So this is a view into the site, into the cul-de-sac, and these are the trees here. This is a view from the path, so it's the trees on the left-hand side of the photograph. And then this is again looking into Harlech Close, and you can see how the trees are close to the properties. The application has been considered by the council's, the planning arboricultural officer, and the reduction in the height and crown radius of the trees is considered to be acceptable due to the size of these trees and their context in relation to the dwellings in Harlech Close. The recommendation is to grant consent. Thank you.
There are no speakers on this item. We will now move to the debate. Committee members wishing to speak should raise their hands. The officer will respond to queries one by one. All committee members have had the opportunity to speak, so we'll move on to the vote. The recommendation is to delegate the decision to consent to the Head of Economy and Planning to await the expiry of the consultation period on 5th of December 2024 and subject to the conditions set out in the report. As Chair, I will move the recommendation. Can I ask the Vice Chair to second, please?
I second it.
Can I have a show of hands for all those for the recommendation? Unanimous. Thank you very much. We will now move on to agenda item 8, CR 20240369 TPO, Cherry Meadow, 26 Perryfield Road, Southgate. Can I ask the officer to introduce the report?
Thank you. Again, I seem to be following Val's lead on this next application. Again, it is a Crawley Borough Council application. And it is for works to reduce the height and crown radius of a protected tree by a maximum of 2 metres. In this case, the tree, as you can see on the screen, is to the south side of the Cherry Meadow car park off Perryfield Road. The tree is one of a group of 3, and actually the next item you'll be considering one of the other trees within the group, protected by a tree preservation order. It's a large and visually prominent tree with a life expectancy of over 100 years. It's an oak tree. And the works are really just for containment. The arboricultural officer, as the report says, considers them to be proportionate and justified. The tree itself you can see in those photos, so it's the tree over here. And consent is recommended subject to the usual tree conditions as they're set out in the report. Thank you.
There are no speakers registered in regard to this item. We will now move to the debate. Committee members wishing to speak should raise their hands. Officers will respond to queries one by one. All committee members have had the opportunity to speak. We will move on to the vote. The recommendation is to delegate the decision to consent to the Head of Economy and Planning to await expiry of the consultation period on 5th of December 2024 and subject to the conditions set out in the report. As Chair, I will move the recommendation. Can I ask the Vice Chair to second, please?
I second it.
Can I have a show of hands for all those for the recommendation? That's unanimous. And we will now move on to agenda item 9, CR 20240378 TPO, Cherry Meadow, 26 Perryfield Road, Southgate. Can I ask the planning officer to introduce the report?
Thank you, Chair. So yes, this, as I said, relates to another one of the trees on the same site. You can see this one is the previous tree you've just considered was to the south of the car park here. This one is to the north, kind of immediately behind Cherry Meadows itself, really. It is an oak tree. Unfortunately, in this case, the application seeks consent to fell the tree. Whilst the tree, if I just move on to the photos, it is a fairly large tree and it does have some visual prominence. It's been heavily reduced in the past. The tree officer now describes it as moribund and with a life expectancy of less than 10 years. And you'll see in paragraphs 4.3 and 4.4 of the report the various concerns that the arboricultural officer has with the tree. And he considers it to be in an advanced state of decline and unlikely to recover. If I just go back to the site plan, you can also see the tree is in close proximity to the building, and so there are also safety concerns given the state of the tree that it could potentially fall and damage the building. So consequently, the recommendation is to agree the felling of this tree subject to the usual conditions, but also one in this case that requires a replacement oak to be planted within 12 months in a position close to the position of the current tree.
There are no speakers in regard to this item. We will now move to the debate. Committee members wishing to speak should raise their hand. The officer will respond to queries one by one. Councillor Burgess.
Thank you. It does look in a poor state, I agree, but it's got woodpecker holes. Does that mean the woodpeckers are still living there, or have they found a new place to live? I mean, and if they're still there, how are we going to make sure that the wildlife is removed to a different habitation?
I don't know the answer to that, I'm afraid. I assume that if the works are planned to be done in the near future, then the woodpeckers are probably not there.
I hope not.
Normally, I mean, if they nest like other birds, then they probably aren't there at the moment. But I guess, I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's an issue for this application anyway, because this is a tree.
So they're going to come back and find their home's gone.
They might do.
It's a shame.
Yeah. They'll start work on one of the other trees then.
Councillor Chariton.
I mean, I guess we have to some extent, none of us here, I mean, as far as I know, are arboriculturalists, so we can't, we'd have to take the expert advice of the expert concerned. But I suppose he's looked at all sorts of alternatives for this. I mean, I guess you can't, for example, remove potentially dangerous limbs and stuff to at least stabilise it. Because what I'm conscious of is they're saying potentially it might have another 10 years of life. And it's always a little bit heartbreaking to chop down an oak tree in particular. And notwithstanding a report which says the density indicates advanced decay and so on. I don't know. The short question is, were other alternatives looked at, such as they were? Are there any alternatives?
I'm not aware there are any alternatives. I mean, the decay that has been found is within the trunk of the tree. We're not talking about branches here. They have investigated what's going on in the trunk. And
no, I saw that.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
is that the principal danger? Because often it's falling branches and so on, particularly but very heavy
I think
limbs.
in this case, the problem is the trunk could collapse given the decay going on within it. And, if that spreads or whatever, then the risk becomes more likely, I think, is the problem.
It's one of the reasons I'm proud to chair this committee. We love our trees in this committee, don't we? Councillor Burgess.
I just have, and my colleague across the way will know, we have a very, very active tree person in our ward, which follows every tree that comes down. So I'm covering my own. Oh, you know too. Sorry. So it's been very badly trimmed in the past. I presume the household has done that, not ours, but the pictures show that it had been really poorly cut back. So what I'm trying to ascertain, yes, look, it's awful. I'm glad my tree people don't leave my trees like that. Could this have, I suppose they've done their best they can, but it looks awful. But if you're saying that the trunk is rotten and that is the danger, then I suppose that's the danger. We have to think of that. But I'm just wondering that if they trimmed it better, it might have made the tree live a bit longer. So anyway, thank you. I'm criticising whoever did the tree, sorry.
I don't think there was a response necessary to that, was there? No. Any other colleagues wish to make any comments? Councillor Nawaz.
I think a very good point has been raised by Brenda. So on that, sorry, Councillor Burgess, apologies. So we were ward colleagues, so we're a bit casual, sorry. But on this application, it says there's no history of previous tree works. If that is the case, it's one of our tree, Crawley Borough Council tree. If it's been trimmed and seems like quite badly, as Councillor Burgess said, there's no history. But any TPO, you need to apply a planning application for that to cut it. How that happened?
I don't know the answer to that, and I don't think the arboricultural officer does either. I think the works that have taken place were a considerable period of time ago. So they may have been unauthorised, but I don't think his view is that there's anything that we could be doing about them now. It's not they've done recent works and there's now a problem. Whatever works have happened there were done many years ago, and who knows who by. Sorry, it's not a great answer, but we don't know more than that.
No, is that something could be looked into and find if was there an incident and or something has been reported to the council? Because this committee, there's a lot of TPO come to us, and when it comes to us, we've been pushed into do officers arrive? But if it's not been noted or not been investigated, that doesn't sound good for our own trees, rather than we impose restriction to others.
We can certainly look into that. I mean, I don't think we can deal with that tonight, but I can certainly ask. I can certainly ask Russell to look back at what happened to the tree, when it happened, and whether any works. Well, clearly works weren't authorised, but
yeah, looks like it's our tree.
If he's got any idea when those works took place.
No, I agree. I'm not expecting an answer today, but I think we need some kind of answer, Chair, on that. What has happened to it? Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Mullins.
Thank you. I mean, as the Chair has just said, we do love our trees on this planning committee, but I also think we have some extremely good officers and I can't say the word, whatever they are, the people that look after trees, and they really are very well trained and they do understand and they do their very level best to save trees as much as possible. But there does come a time that sometimes the poor old tree's had its life and maybe it has to go. I think Councillor Nawaz has raised a really important point. We have a lot of oak trees in Crawley, a huge amount of tree cover in Crawley, and a lot of those oak trees are on private land. They're in the people's back gardens, and it is the responsibility of the house owner or the householder to look after those trees and make sure they're trimmed and cared for properly. But we don't pay for that. The householder is responsible and they have to pay for it. And unless we have a tree preservation order on the trees, they don't have to approach the council to ask permission to trim the tree or deal with the tree in any way. They're quite able to go out to private company of any kind and have them come onto their land and deal with their problem tree. So I think you've raised a really good question there, because if we're responsible for trees, we need to get who is responsible and what responsibilities homeowners and householders have for those trees within their properties, which is a tricky one, I think.
To come back on that point, we do offer a free advice to homeowners or property owners on TPO trees. So that covers to a certain extent that, but it's something that we do need to consider. Councillor Burgess knows a lot about this. Her trees have been in this committee before. Councillor Burgess.
Yes, I thank Councillor Nawaz for picking up what I was really trying to say about looking after our trees, because if this is a TPO tree, it's terrible. It's been done without authorisation, as far as I can see, because I know having 5 TPO trees along my boundary, I have to have them done regularly, and they always tell me how they can only take so much off, and they always leave the trees looking nothing like that, and so it is. We do need to look after our trees, especially the TPO, because if people get hold of them, just lop them off. This is what you end up with, and I agree with Councillor Nawaz. I'd be interested to know who's done that, if it's a TPO tree, and whether other TPO trees in the area are looked after. I know we've got quite a few TPO trees in people's property, as has been mentioned, and we really do have to make sure that they are looked after properly, and the people who take them on realise that a TPO tree does cost money, but in the long run it is better for the tree and for the householder. Thank you.
Councillor Adonai.
Thank you very much. I know I'm very much aware that most trees at this time of the year, they look ugly because all their leaves are falling. I'm not saying that I want to give this tree another life, another chance to live, but I believe trees look ugly around this time of the year. But it will have been nice to see how this tree looks beautiful during in summertime. But for the safety of the residents close to that tree, that's my main concern about the safety. And I just like to also want to find out if that house is privately owned or is it owned by the council, the house. Okay, all right then. And I also see evidence of previous attempts to trim the trees one way or the other, and which has not been done very well. I think that tree has gone through several attempts to trim it, and that's why it looks ugly like that. I think it's not been cared for very well. It's very sad to see a lovely tree like this old to be felled, and I think, but for the safety of the people living there and the property, if they feel that tree needs to go, sadly it has to go. But I think it has not been properly managed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. Any other comments? All committee members have had the opportunity to speak, so we'll move on to the vote. The recommendation is to delegate the decision to consent to the Head of Economy and Planning to await the expiry of the consultation period on 5th of December 2024 and subject to the conditions set out in the report. I'm just going to stop there. How has this come to committee before the consultation period has concluded, and what would happen if a satisfactory objection is received after this point, just out of curiosity?
To be honest, I'm not sure. I assume because there's some pressure to get the works done or some urgency to getting the works done, which means we can't wait until the next meeting in January. I assume that's the case. Sorry, what was your second question?
So, yeah, why are we making the decision before?
Yeah, well, I think that's why. So I think
if an adverse,
if we get a comment in, then I think you're delegating authority to us to consider it. So we will have to consider it, and I guess it's not impossible that a comment could come in on one of the three applications that we think, hang on, we didn't even think of that or something. It seems very unlikely. Yeah. But if something did, then we'd have to give that due consideration.
It's just following on the theme that we've had, not so much recently, but before, where we were quite often delegating decisions rather than making the final decision. So it's just a question. So I will say again, the recommendation is to delegate the decision to consent to the Head of Economy and Planning to await the expiry of the consultation period on 5th of December 2024 and subject to the conditions set out in the report. As Chair, I will move the recommendation. Can I ask the Vice Chair to second, please?
Seconded.
Can I ask for a show of hands for all those for the recommendation? Again, unanimous. Okay. Moving on to agenda item 10, section 106 Monies, quarter 2, 2024-2025. This report provides an update on section 106 Monies. Do committee members wish to make any comments or ask any questions on this report? Councillor Jaggard.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to ask a question about page 149 about the Three Bridges Station money, 16,787. It just seems that we keep drip feeding the railway station redevelopment, I'm assuming, money, and it just keeps drip feeding all the time. And it just seems that they've only just had 60,000 and now they've got another 16,000. And I'm just a bit concerned that they're taking up quite a lot of our money and nothing actually has been done on it.
This was an expected allocation. It's just that procedurally we're getting it allocated. It was already budgeted for to include it as one of the part of the section 106 agreements. So it's just, it requires its own separate process because it's coming from a particular developer source.
Okay. It says the completed, due to be completed in 2026. That's not that far away. And I just wondered if we had any idea of when that development was going to start.
We are still in the throes of the negotiations with the railway authorities with respect to station change procedure. We are making some progress on that, and our expectation is that we will very soon be moving towards what's called a series of land exchange arrangements that would then enable the scheme to be finalised. Subsequent to that, it would then go out for a consultation period before, via the railway authorities, being referred to the Office for Road and Rail for a final assessment from the point of view of the railway authorities.
Okay, so because it started many years ago now, so we haven't even really gotten a start date at all.
I can't really give you a start date until I'm clear as to the outcome of the land exchange arrangement.
Okay.
Apologies.
Any further questions on the report? Okay, there is no supplemental agenda. The business of the committee has concluded, so the meeting is closed at 20:35. Can committee members just remain seated for a second while the recording's turned off?